Greetings and welcome to today's webinar, GIS and the Arkansas Crash Analytics Tool, brought to you by the Arkansas GIS Users Forum. I'd like to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Chad and I'll be your host today. I'm also joined by our panelist Dino Trawick, the City of Fort Smith Utilities GIS Manager and Chair of the Arkansas GIS Users Forum. Also Sharon Hawkins, the ArDOT GIS and Mapping Administrator and Chair of the Arkansas GIS Board. If at any time during today's webinar you have a question, please feel free to use the Q&A option located at the bottom of your Zoom screen and post your question in the Q&A window. Also, the options to raise your hand if you would like to join the conversation, or simply use the chat function to post your questions into the webinar chat. At this time, I'd like to introduce our presenters today, Taunya Kidd and Jeremy Plummer with the Arkansas Department of Transportation to present GIS and the Arkansas Crash Analytics Tool.
Okay, so again, my name is Taunya Kidd and I am a traffic safety analyst with the Arkansas Department of Transportation. I've been at ArDOT 3 years. Before that, I was an operations planner at the Department of Emergency Management. And before that, I was full-time in the Arkansas National Guard. I'm also here with Jeremy Plummer. He's our safety information coordinator. He started out as a traffic safety analyst and was promoted a couple of years ago. And he's largely in charge of all of the data that feeds into ACAT. So he's here to answer those data-centric questions if you have any. The Arkansas Crash Analytics Tool is a public-facing web application. It is a collection of dashboards that's nested in a classic story map. And so we're just going to talk about the creation of that and the data and the processes that have gone into creating it, and then we'll take a look at the live tool. So it's basically we developed ACAT to support the Arkansas Strategic Highway Safety Plan. The SHSP guides and directs the development of specific goals and strategies to reduce roadway fatalities towards 0 deaths. That's our ultimate goal. And dashboards are an easy way to visualize and explore large data sets. The dashboards that we use are an Esri product, and Esri likes to, they categorize the dashboards into 4 different types. And they've kind of marked and used ours as an example of a strategic dashboard. But I like to think that our dashboards, and probably most dashboards, are multifunctional. So yes, we are strategic. We can use our dashboard for planning and goal setting. But we are also tactical because our maintenance and project management teams can use the dashboards. We're operational. We are able to monitor trends and look for indicators of possible trouble areas. And of course, we're informational too, because it is a public-facing application. It allows us to have public outreach and engagement with other organizations that wouldn't otherwise have access to the information. The SHSP has 4 strategies. The 4 E's that you see here: education, engineering, enforcement, and emergency services. And we have developed ACAT to support those 4 E's. There are 5 critical areas outlined in the SHSP: driver behavior, infrastructure improvement, special road users, vulnerable road users, and operational improvements. And we developed ACAT really under that operational improvement umbrella. Data collection and analysis is a primary emphasis area under operational improvement. But even though it directly supports operational improvement, all of those critical emphasis areas are data driven. And that goes back to how the dashboards can, it is multifunctional, and the dashboard can assist initiatives in all of those emphasis areas. So we're really excited to share it with everyone. And we've seen it grow in functionality and in usefulness over the past couple of years. And we're looking forward to see where the future takes us. So it has been a proven tool to help with informed decisions and planning projects. So it encourages data collection. It encourages our users to, okay, let me back up. So once we published this and made it public facing, the organizations and the stakeholders that we work with on a daily basis were able to see, to visualize where these crashes are. And all of the jurisdictions, all of the state police use a database called eCrash. And most of the jurisdictions, the local law enforcement, have adopted that. But we have some laggers that haven't adopted it, and actually developing this and publishing this application has facilitated bringing those other groups online. So we're seeing more and more organizations use the data collection that we have so that we can have the best data set possible. So there are a number of organizations that have adopted eCrash, and that has grown, and it serves to make ACAT more accurate and reliable as a data source. The traffic safety section, because of the ACAT tool, is better able to prioritize long-term and ongoing projects, because ACAT reduces the number of direct requests that we get. And so basically it allows us to use our time and, specific man hours to be spent on the outline goals and objectives instead of last minute requests that pop up, because everyone is able to come to this application and find the answers that they need. So the way that it works is there are separate tabs. Let me back up here so you can actually see them. So ACAT maintains a rolling 5-year data set. So at the moment, it's crashes from 2015 through 2019. And once we had quality checked and collected all of the 2020 data, we will add that to ACAT, and then 2015 would drop off. So we're always going to have a 5-year rolling data set. And there are separate tabs up here at the top. Each one of these tabs is its own dashboard. So there is a separate tab for each area of emphasis that's outlined in the SHSP plan. And the data is intentionally streamlined and curated to assist researchers with quick answers to unique questions that might be related to those emphasis areas. I think I've kind of rolled through all of this already. But it does allow users to drill down and answer those questions without having to know a lot about databases or data management. And so we've kind of tried to be intuitive and make, you know, educated guesses about the questions that might be asked. And as people are engaged in using the dashboards, we can go back and add more data or filter it down and make it more usable. So it really is kind of a full circle type of thing. And a lot of what we see today is actually based on feedback that we've gotten from our users. So that to me is the exciting part, is that I can see the engagement and I can see how the tool's being used. And so it makes it better to, it makes the tool ultimately better based on the feedback that we get from the users. And just kind of some background on how it was built. The base maps that we use were created from boundary layers that were provided by the Arkansas GIS office, and the Arnold road inventory layers that were developed by ArDOT, by Sharon in the GIS section, and the FHWA Arkansas division. The crash data that we receive is owned by the Arkansas State Police, and we have a mutual memorandum of understanding with the Arkansas State Police that allows us to get basically a copy of their eCrash database. And then we take that database in the traffic safety section and quality check it and clean it up. We're looking for duplicates or errors in the information. And then we also, we do have several organizations that have not adopted this eCrash system. So there are paper crash reports that have to be manually entered. And that is the responsibility of Arkansas State Police. But the ArDOT traffic safety section has assisted the state police in the past year and a half, I would say, to help them get caught up and help to bring our database to a more current level. So we do have, we have staff at ArDOT that are manually entering crashes, and we also have staff that are locating crashes that did not have an actual crash location when they were entered into eCrash. So we take all of that data that's collected from the state police, that's collected from other organizations throughout the state, and we roll all of that into the ArDOT crash database. And then that's where the big process comes to start developing the ACAT tool. So once we have the ArDOT crash database, which includes all the crashes of all severity levels, and then all of the various attributes that are recorded, and they're divided into the crash database and all these various tables so that we have access to each attribute that's being recorded. Then we will clean that up and make sure that it's a good representation of the crashes, that we don't have duplicates and that sort of thing. Jeremy could talk about that process in more detail later, but you know, there's a lot of scripting and processing that goes into to that side of it to end up with the ArDOT crash database that I then use to create the okay, I got to notice that there's something wrong with the magnification that you're seeing, but I don't see, I guess I don't see what you're seeing. So I'm not sure how to fix that. But for the moment right now, just know that there's a lot of tables and it's a very large data set. And so it's not always easy to just like, you know, run a quick query. When somebody asks a question, it may take us days to find the answer because we're having to filter through so many crashes with so many attributes that were tied to it. And so this tool just makes it easier because we're able to streamline that process and curate the information based on specific emphasis areas and being intuitive about the questions that might be asked. So we'll go to, this is, after we have the data set, then we run through these models and I would basically build, I use the model and different processes to build a feature service and publish it onto AGOL or ArcGIS Online. And then I would take that feature service and create a feature layer. And then I would use that feature layer as a layer in the map. And then I would take that map and build an application or a dashboard. And I'm trying to run through this pretty quick so we can go ahead and get to the live version. And then hopefully the magnification thing we can fix at that point. So let's see. Okay, it says to explore. Actually, I'm going to just click over on this tab. This is the live ACAT tool. And when you first open it up, you see a welcome tab. And this was our version of the splash screen. I am not great at the scripting languages, so I don't know how to create a splash screen for a dashboard. But this is a good alternative. And so basically this welcome tab comes up and then we have these tabs along the top that concentrate on specific emphasis areas. So we'll start with the roadway departure crashes. I'm going to let that load and then see what that looks like for you guys. Are you? Now let me see if I can. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my controls, the meeting controls.
It looks like it's all good now, Tanya. If you go back to where you were.
Okay, so do you see, you're looking at the road departure crashes tab of the ACAT?
We were. If you open.
You don't see that now?
No.
Okay. I don't know.
Taunya, there we go. That's it.
Yeah, just make that window you're on now full screen, and it looks fine now.
Okay. Okay, are we good? I'll stay here for now. Okay, so this is basically the live version of the ACAT. And what we recommend is that you start, okay, I'm getting carried away here. So when you open up any of these tabs, it takes a second to load. And then what we're looking at are all of the roadway departure crashes within the state from 2015 to 2019 that we have recorded. And then you have all of these indicators here that separate those crashes out based on its relationship to other emphasis areas. So we have roadway departure crashes, but if you wanted to divide that down even more, you could say there were 10,821 impaired driver crashes that were also roadway departure crashes. And this is the way the information is presented. So the only filter applied to this at the moment is that they are all roadway departure crashes. And then you could select this box over here and it pulls out different filters that you can choose from. So if we wanted to separate these crashes based on a specific county, we could choose a county, and then the map would highlight that area and rotate, and it's taking a second because it has to cycle through. But now it's filtered all of these crashes out, and we can see only the crashes in Arkansas County that were roadway departure crashes. And then there are, you know, that was based on a geographical area, but we could also go down and say, okay, we want to only see the alcohol related crashes. So we're going to change that filter, and it is cycling through all of that information. So it takes a second to roll over, but now you can see the impaired driver crashes and the roadway departure crashes are actually equal. And I should note that the impaired driver includes alcohol, drug, or illness. It just so happens in this case that all of the impaired driver crashes were alcohol related. And they were all roadway departure crashes. So you can see how you can choose different filters and kind of narrow the scope of what you're looking for. And I don't know, most of these are 0, so we're not going to find anything. But maybe we want to look at just the motorcycle related that were also impaired driver. And it looks like that's bringing that down to 0. So I guess, yeah, you kind of need to know what you're looking for, but you can filter that down as much as you need. I'm going to show you along the tabs, you have them outlined, but over here on the end, if you can see that on your screen, there's either 3 dots or there's like a little menu tab. And if you click on that, you will see additional tabs. So we can look at the bicycle and pedestrian one. This shows, of course, all of the bicycle and pedestrian crashes within the state. It includes all severities. Most of these tabs are outlined the same way. You have indicators over here that show different emphasis areas. There's a roadway surface condition graph. This graph is crash severity by crash manner. So we have the single vehicle crash, and then within that group, you have fatal, suspected serious injury, suspected minor injury, possible injury, and then no apparent injury. And you can look at these graphs and filter as well. So on the map and on the indicators, what we see are bicycle and pedestrian crashes. Over here on this side, you have the total number of crashes for this emphasis area, and then the total number of crashes overall. And then this shows the percentage that this emphasis area has of the overall number. And then this is the same with KA, which means fatal or suspected serious injury crashes. So there were 836 fatal or suspected serious injury crashes that involved a bicycle or a pedestrian. out of 13,147 total KA crashes, which is 6.4% of the total number of KA crashes. So there, basically it just kind of pulls that out and shows you a lot of information. And then again, you have all of these different filters that you can choose from to narrow this down even farther. We looked at county earlier, but let me go back up and spend a little more time. We have district, troop, county, city. MPO is our metro planning organizations, and STEP agencies are groups that the Arkansas State Police work with for different initiatives, and that's usually at the county or city level. Once you get past the geographic filters, then you have crash severity, crash manner, the surface condition and the light conditions at the time of the crash. And then you have all of these emphasis areas that you can choose from. So as you select those, that's going to change, you know, what is highlighted on the map and the numbers that are indicated here. You can also select things through the graphs. So right now, you can see this is showing the fatal and suspected serious injury crashes that were bicycle or pedestrian related. But if I only wanted to look at the fatal crashes from 2019, I could click on that bar, and this would act as a filter and select out only the fatal crashes that happened in 2019 that are also bicycle and pedestrian related. And then once you're done looking at that specific thing, you can just click back and it repopulates everything. That's by clicking on the actual graph. Now, if you wanted to only look at fatal crashes on the graph, you can select these, but it doesn't change. When you change the legend in the graph, it doesn't change any of the selectors. You'd actually have to physically click on the graph to see the indicators change to only fatal crashes. But you can, if you want to see the graph only show suspected serious injury without affecting the rest of it, you could cross out that section in the legend. So having those dynamic graphs and charts are helpful, especially like here, it's hard to read these. So if you wanted to get rid of the single vehicle crashes, well, I thought I had a scroll bar, but I don't see it. But you're able to manipulate these and make it easier to see. And there's also a way to make that full screen so it's easier to see. And then of course you can highlight the individual sections of each table. And as you're doing that, it's changing the numbers in the dashboard. You can also select a crash. So I'm going to just zoom in so that I can see a crash. And I'll select these out here. So I tried to click on this the black dot represents a fatal crash. This is the legend, by the way, for the map. You have fatal is black and red is suspected serious injury. So I tried to click on that, but there were so many crashes in that area. If you look, the pop-up says 1 of 8. So you can, if that's the case, you can scroll through each of those and look at additional information for those crashes. So if you see these little triangles and the number of something else, then you know that you actually have selected more than one crash. But we're going to get to where we just have one. So we can, and then of course it'll say showing one. So once you have the pop-up, I'm going to make, we'll go through that, and it shows you like a lot more detailed information about that specific crash. Basically where it happened and its relationship to all of these different emphasis areas, how many fatalities or suspected serious injuries were involved in that crash. So even though it's one crash, there were 2 suspected serious injuries, presumably because 2 individuals were injured. And then it has the date and the agencies responsible for responding to the incident. And then any other filters or selectors as far as it relates to these different selectors that you have over here to filter out information. So you can ultimately pull up information on each individual report. And the cool thing about this also is that when we get all of that information from the Arkansas State Police, it is full of personal identifying information, and we're able to scrub that and clean it and present this in a useful way without sharing any personal information. And that makes it easier for us to build these databases and share this with the public without worrying about any Privacy Act information getting out or violating our agreement with the state police as far as how we use this information. So that's kind of a general overview of the way it works. Again, we do have these separate tabs for different emphasis areas. And then this first tab is actually all fatal and suspected serious injury crashes. Just because when we do studies and when a lot of our planning organizations look at crash information, a lot of the decisions that we make are based on fatal and suspected serious injury crashes. So developing this tab that only looks at those crashes, it allows us to, basically dive down a little deeper and look at the trends only based on those most serious crashes, and maybe look at different trouble areas or identify hotspots where we might need to pay more attention to those other things we talked about, the driver behavior or the conditions of the road or that type of thing. So it's really just a useful tool for us to see what the trends are and for our partners to look at, where those crashes are happening and contemplate why and what we can do to alleviate any problems we see. So that's basically the overview. I'm going to look through here real quick. I think that's about it for mine. I'm going to stop sharing and pass it back over to Chad.
All right. Thanks so much, Taunya. Okay, everyone. So if you have any questions, feel free to populate those in the question and answer window now. And we can peruse through those and answer the questions. I am going to attempt to scroll back through the chat right now, as there was a question asked previously. Here it is. Okay, so to either yourself, Taunya, or Jeremy, a question was asked, do you know which jurisdictions have not adopted the eCrash data entry for crashes? Specifically, which cities have not adopted entering their data? And can a list be provided? And I honestly would kind of add on to that and also pose the question, if you do know that answer, do you also know if there is an effort to standardize crash reporting onto one system so that this tool could benefit, I guess, in a statewide manner?
So we do have a list of all agencies that have adopted eCrash. I'm not sure about sharing that. I would have to, Jeremy may be able to answer that, or we may need to go to our supervisor to get permission to share that. But we are actively engaging with those organizations and trying to get them on board. As far as the state of Arkansas and the state police own the crash data, and it is, eCrash is their standard that we are trying to help them get all organizations to adopt. I do know that there's grant money and programs involved in actively engaging all law enforcement agencies to adopt eCrash as their standard reporting tool. And I think I'll leave it there and let Jeremy follow on with anything we need to add.
The only thing that I would add is that those grants, we're kind of helping state police provide equipment to some of the smaller agencies for the equipment that they need to be able to use eCrash. And kind of the only hurdle that we have right now is that there is a law that certain like fatal reports have to be in within a certain time frame, but there's really no teeth in the law, and we've been like nothing to really make police agencies report those in a timely manner. So we've been working on that lately, but haven't been able to get anything done yet. And that's all I have on that.
Okay, great. Thank you both. So it looks like another question that was both asked and answered in the chat. So for the rest of our attendees to hear was, is there a way for the public to self-report a minor crash, say with an animal which may not be recorded in a police report? And it looks like the answer to that question was there's currently not a way for people to report a small animal crash without actually filing that report with the police. Let me check over here in the Q&A and see. So again, if anyone has any questions, like I said, feel free to use those tools there, the Q&A or the chat, or again, even if you would like to, I guess, to go interactive, if you've got something you would like to look at in the crash analytics tool itself, we can do that as well. So one more question here, is all of the data stored in one location?
So the data that is actively feeding ACAT is stored in one feature service on AGOL. And that will probably change as this project gets bigger. We'll probably divide that up into geographic areas or emphasis areas. But right now, this is one feature service that is feeding each and every tab, and it is just filtered out to serve that tab. And then that information is created from that database and all of those tables that I listed, that I showed listed during the platform. So it's really it's a very small piece. It doesn't seem very small because there are a lot of crashes, but it's a very small piece of that overall database that we have housed at ArDOT, which is actually a copy of the Arkansas State Police version. So the answer to that is yes and no. Yes, ACAT is served from one data source, but that pulls from a lot of different processes and data sets to create that data source.
Okay, so a somewhat related question was, do you anticipate this ever evolving into a more live version that would have a less delay for presentation? So I guess to expound upon that would be to talk about, the process of or the automation of the data. In this case, say, for example, as state police reports in the eCrash system, what does the chain of events look like before that data is presented in the analytics tool?
So when we actually, I'm glad this question was asked. When we first published ACAT, it was intended to be it was never a live version, but it's a more recent version. So we had what we called preliminary data included, and we had notifications and disclaimers saying this is our preliminary data, because there is no real consequence to those reports not being submitted in a timely manner, which means we weren't always getting the reports in a timely manner. And of course, then we couldn't present them in a timely manner. That means that the most, what we consider historical data ends with 2019. So all crashes in 2020 and everything that's happened in 2021 up to this point, what we have on file is considered preliminary data, and it will change because, our experience has shown us that those crashes and reports will continue to come in. So until we are comfortable with those, that we have all of the crashes from 2020, those crashes will be preliminary data. And I say that to say that we did ultimately, we initially released this as with the preliminary data, but there were confusing or mistaken reports in the media. And so we didn't feel comfortable leaving those visual pictures out there, knowing that they were being misconstrued, if that makes any sense. I'm going off on a rabbit hole now, but basically, I think at this point, until we are more comfortable and we have a very standardized across the board statewide system of collecting the data, it will probably always be historical. Our hope is to narrow that gap, which is probably, it's part of why we are helping the state police manually enter crash reports so that we can get caught up and close that gap so that our preliminary data isn't actually 2 years. Maybe it'll only be the last 2 months. And so we're hoping to push that most recent date closer and closer to the live date. But I think there will always be a cushion there for us to allow for quality control and scrubbing that information and making sure that what we put out is accurate. And it may still fluctuate, but there won't be major changes to this information in the future.
All right. Thanks, Taunya. Looks like a somewhat humorous addition. Is there a data collected for road rage incidents? I would say I think there should be, but probably only in the case of an accident taking place. Can you comment on that, Taunya?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a box to check for that, but the driver behavior is always really hard for us to record. There are a lot of, driver behavior issues are, that would include speeding or distracting.
So looks like you muted before you ended there, Taunya. I've got one more question. I guess this relates more to the overall tool itself. Question was asked, is it possible to share the model builder that was used, I guess, for this application specifically?
I don't think there would be any issue with sharing the model. It might be a better use to maybe walk through what we did on a one-to-one basis. And that's totally doable too. Just because it's so unique to what our process is, I'm not sure that it would be transferable, but we could definitely share our process and walk through what we've done if anybody's interested.
Okay, great. So Sam, you asked that question. I will be sure to pass your contact information on to Taunya if you guys would like to have that conversation. Looks like all of the questions have been answered. We'll give it just another moment here if anybody has anything. If not, I would like to first and foremost thanks Taunya and Jeremy and ArDOT for their presentation today. We sincerely appreciate you and all of the information that you shared. I would like to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. And again, I would like to remind everyone, if you have an idea for a future presentation, please feel free to visit our website, argisusers.org/webinar, and click the Call for Presentations button to submit your idea. Our next presentation will actually be the live event for our spring meeting coming up next month. So we do not have another webinar scheduled at this time. The next event will be that spring meeting. So look for that announcement to come in the very near future. And with that, I would like to again thank our panelists and our presenters and all of the attendees today, and want to wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you again.